Welcome to the deep dive. Our source today is Psalm 95. It's this really incredible ancient text.
Mm-hmm.
It works like, well, both this really rousing call to worship, but also carries a pretty serious historical warning.
Yeah.
So we want to unpack it, cut through some of the modern noise maybe, and find some actionable ways to anchor our trust and keep that connection strong, especially when life gets stressful.
And that tension you mentioned, that's really where the Psalm's power is. It's not just offering easy comfort.
Yeah.
It paints a picture of a full, active relationship. It starts with God's majesty, his unmatched greatness, which kind of sets the scene for how we should respond.
Okay.
But the real core lesson, the thing we really need to pull out, I think, is about what happens when our hearts gradually harden internally. It's almost like a roadmap for, well, genuine spiritual resilience.
Okay, let's start with that invitation then, because it really jumps out. It's not passive at all.
It's not in the slightest.
The first verses, they just hit you with this command for, like, active engagement. It's immediate.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, come, let us sing unto the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. It's asking for something exuberant, thankful, loud even.
And what's fascinating, right, is why that joy is required. It's not just, be happy.
Right.
The foundation for it is this total, absolute acknowledgement of God's place. The text insists he is a great God and a great king above all gods. You can only really make that joyful noise if you understand who you're singing to.
And it backs that claim up immediately, doesn't it? With these huge details from creation.
Yeah, staggering detail.
Defines God as the ultimate power source. In his hand are the deep places of the earth. The strength of the hills is his also.
Mm-hmm. The sea.
The sea is his because he made it, and his hands formed the dry land. It's like an instant reality check about where we fit in the grand scheme.
But, and here's that tension again that you have to hold, the focus shifts almost instantly from this cosmic scale to profound personal intimacy. We go from the king who formed land to being urged, oh, come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker.
That is a fascinating switch. So how do we reconcile that? The creator who makes oceans and mountains, but also relate to him as like a caring shepherd. It feels like one could just overshadow the other.
Well, that's the critical balance Psalm 95 gives us. We hold them together by recognizing how the text defines us. We are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand.
Okay.
So the king of everything chooses to relate to us, not just as, subjects groveling somewhere,
Right.
but as sheep under a shepherd's care. So our worship sees his huge scope, but our submission, our kneeling, trusts his closeness. That dynamic, that's really the whole point of verses 1 through 7.
But then that smooth flow it kind of shatters in verse 8. It's jarring, isn't it?
Mm.
Right in the middle of this beautiful picture of kneeling and singing
Mm-hmm.
comes this sharp warning. Today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your heart.
Yeah.
It feels abrupt, like dropping everything.
Exactly. And you have to ask why. Why this suddenness? It's because the psalm uses history as, well, the best teacher it has.
Okay.
The source text points back to that rebellion, the provocation, at Meribah and Massa. For listeners maybe needing context, these were specific times in the wilderness journey.
Right after they'd been freed.
Yes. After witnessing incredible miracles, they immediately started questioning if God could provide basics like water and food. They tested God basically through doubt and impatience.
So the core issue wasn't necessarily some huge dramatic sin, but more like impatience.
Yeah.
Chronic spiritual forgetfulness leading to doubt.
Precisely. It's that fixed mindset of unbelief settling in. And the text spells out the consequence. God was grieved with this generation for, astonishingly, 40 years long.
40 years.
Because it says, they did err in their heart, and they have not known my ways. It wasn't just ignorance of rules. They were fundamentally off course in their core being. Their heart was erring.
And the final devastating cost of those 40 years of hard hearts. God swore an oath, didn't he? That they wouldn't enter his promised rest.
Yes, and this idea of rest is so important here. In the context of that journey, this isn't just about, taking a break or a holiday.
Well,
It's that spiritual fulfillment, the security found in the promised land.
yeah.
It's the state of settled peace and faithful trust that comes only from being aligned with God's will.
So they lost that deep foundational peace.
Because they kept rejecting the voice showing them how to get there. Yeah. The warning is stark. Constant doubt, disobedience, it leads to spiritual stagnation. You get excluded from true peace.
It sounds like the text is saying the ultimate price for chronic cynicism or apathy isn't some external lightning bolt, but losing that internal peace and fulfillment we're actually designed for.
That's spot on. Denying the rest is the natural outcome of a hard heart. A closed, cynical heart simply can't settle, it can't trust, and so it can't rest.
Okay, so let's bring this home. If we take this ancient manual and apply it to you, the listener, trying to navigate today's relentless pace, how do we use this? The call to joyful worship, the warning against hard hearts. How does that strengthen trust today?
Well, I think we can distill the wisdom here into 4 really actionable modern strategies, things that directly push back against that spiritual fatigue and cynicism.
Hey, what's first?
First, make a deliberate effort to choose active gratitude as an antidote to cynicism. Psalm demands that joyful noise.
Right.
In our world, it's so easy to just slip into cynicism, focus on what's wrong, so we have to actively inject gratitude. That means choosing to remember the great ting side of God, that sheer power holding the world together, even in our small daily worries.
So when you feel overwhelmed by some problem.
Exactly. Remembering the God who formed the dry land helps put your own hope, your own scale back into perspective. It reframes worship.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's not a luxury. It's like a defense mechanism against apathy.
All right.
Okay, so the second application must relate to that duality we talked about.
It does. Anchor your identity in the shepherd's care. We have to constantly balance the awe of the Creator with the intimacy of the shepherd. When all those external stresses pile up, money, job, relationships, you need that reminder that you are specifically called the people of his pasture. The one with infinite power is also the one invested in your well-being. Holding both stops God from feeling too distant or too casual.
And the third point must connect back to that historical warning then. We need a strategy for what? Keeping our hearts soft.
Yeah, essentially maintaining a tender heart against decision fatigue. Think about it. The Israelites erred because their hearts got tired of the journey, tired of trusting over 40 years.
Okay.
In modern life, we face this chronic, low-level stress, this decision fatigue, right? And it pushes us towards the path of least resistance, which is often spiritual avoidance. But that path of least resistance, that's exactly what hardens the heart. Staying tender means intentionally listening for that quiet, subtle voice that asks for obedience, even when it's inconvenient or feels countercultural.
Resisting the urge to just dismiss things because you're tired.
Exactly. Actively choosing to know his ways, even when the wilderness part of life feels really long.
Which brings us to the final, maybe the most crucial point. Pursuing the right kind of rest. The rest of fidelity. Not just the rest of leisure. Because so many of us are exhausted chasing rest through, shopping, vacations, endless projects.
Right. But the rest denied to that generation wasn't just a break. It was entry into the fulfilled life. Psalm 95 tells us true peace. That ultimate rest is found only in trusting the shepherd and committing to walk his way. It's the peace from surrendering control, allowing yourself to be led instead of constantly trying to force your own way. And that trust, it brings a kind of peace that, external stuff, holidays, achievement, they just can't touch.
Wow. This has been a really powerful look at how what seems like a straightforward passage is actually this incredibly sophisticated guide to resilient living.
It really is.
Psalm 95 is just so clear. Worship joyfully, submit humbly, and stay vigilant against that spiritual unbelief. True peace comes from choosing trust, not resistance, resting in him.
And that ancient command to obey and the call to joyful praise, they're just two sides of the same coin, fundamentally interconnected parts of a strong relationship.
Absolutely. Look, this knowledge is valuable. We hope you found it useful, but applying it is where the real benefit lies.
That's always the key.
So the question we leave you with is this. How will you apply this information in your life?